What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Dana. If you're new here, I do wholesale real estate. I also sell on eBay and Amazon. So if you check out my old videos, there might be real estate, there might be reselling. It depends on what you want to take a look at. But check them out if you're into that kind of stuff. I just posted a couple deal video breakdowns, and this is going to be another deal video breakdown where I talk about a novation, what that is, how that works in relation to wholesale real estate, and how potentially you can use this in your business to turn maybe some small town rural markets, things like that, from a no deal to a deal. And hopefully this is a good video for you. So man, this was a hard one. I'll tell you about it from start to finish, and I might get off track, but forgive me, I'm just going to ramble here. I don't know if I'm going to edit a bunch on this one, but let me tell you about it. So this was a lead from Leadzolo, where I pay for PPL. It's pay per lead. It's a software you pay anywhere from 25 bucks to like 80 bucks a lead. Could be more if you're bidding on like specific counties. But anyways, for the sake of the argument here, this was a $79 lead that I paid for a nationwide campaign. Came to me out of a rural small town in Iowa. I'm out of Arizona. Doesn't matter where I'm from. The leads could come from anywhere in the country. So anyways, rural, small town, Iowa. Lead came over and the person wanted, I believe, 125 for the house based on the conversation. They said it was in pretty good condition. It needed maybe some paint, maybe some minor updates, but they had a brand new kitchen in it. They had a recent air conditioner. They had raised the ceilings in the house. Like, they were telling me all about how like great this house is. And you have to take their word for it when you're doing virtual wholesale, because I'm not driving or flying to Iowa to go check this house out. They sent me a few photos. It looked like it was in pretty solid condition, and based on market comps, looked like it should sell for around 180,000 bucks. So 120 isn't, even though it sounds like it, 120 is not enough margin to pay for a house, do any amount of rehab, pay closing costs, realtor commissions, things like that, if you could sell it for 180 on the back end. And so I had a conversation with them, and we got down to 95,000. And I was like, worst case 95. If I could sell it for like 105 to somebody who could sell it for 180, there's enough margin there that I could wholesale it. So that was the initial intention. We sent a contract. They signed the contract at 95,000 net to seller. I pay closing costs, which I'm going to pass on to the end buyer. Anyways, I started marketing it. I had some decent feedback, but then everybody was like, it's just too far. And I couldn't get any cash buyer to commit to going out there. So I finally started trying to JV. JV is a joint venture. So when you find somebody local in the market, maybe knows more investors in the area. I wasn't paying for any softwares like I pay for now that help find you cash buyers. And so I JV'd with somebody. They sent a buyer out. The buyer never made an offer. And it was coming to the end of the inspection period. And I just called the seller and I said, hey, look, it's not going to work. From what I'm being told, it's going to be too big of a project for me to do from out of state. And the hope was that there was going to be somebody who could come in and they would say, yep, this makes sense. We can take the deal down. We can buy the project. They get their 95. I get a little bit. And then we either partner on the project or I assign it to them, however it's going to work out. And so it wasn't going to work out. And I said, but I have a solution. And what I would like to do is list this for you and see if maybe I can bring a buyer who will commit to that price that we have agreed upon. But how it's going to work is I'm going to end up having to pay, if we do put this on market, I may end up having to pay a realtor commission. I may have to pay some fees. I may have to pay a photographer. There's other stuff that's going to come involved with it. And it's also going to take a little bit longer because we're not doing a cash offer now. We're waiting for somebody who has to go through financing contingencies and inspections and things like that. And I said, so what I can do is send you an agreement and we'll actually raise the price. So we were at 95. I said, let's go to 105, right? We'll give you an extra $10,000 in your pocket by giving us 90 days to get this taken care of for you. And then anything above that 105 that I get to keep whatever that amount is after repairs, fees, costs, commissions, all that other stuff that comes out of it. That would be what I get out of this for helping kind of structure this deal for you. What do you think? And they said, you know what? I like it. I'm fine with it. Let's do it. I don't want to hire an agent. I'm not dealing with repairs. Come to find out, this thing was in forbearance. It was pending foreclosure. They were behind on mortgage payments. A lot of stuff I didn't know leading right into it. And I was like, yikes. So we need to be on a quicker timeline. We need to get an offer. So I called around a couple agents and I said, hey, I've got this deal. It's going to be a novation. So I'm going to do all the negotiating and signing of the agreements on behalf of the listing side of it. The seller will sign once we get an offer. But I'm looking for somebody who's confident in the market, thinks they could get this thing listed, and what can we get for it to sell it quickly. And so I talked to a few agents. One of them sounded really good. I had her go out and visit the house in person, take pictures, and then get back to me with what she thought it could sell for if we listed it on market to sell like ASAP. That's what I want. Not maximizing money, maximizing time and selling as quickly as possible. And she said, look, it's rough. It's pretty rough. And it smells like animals. There's a lot of animals in the house. It's going to be tough to show. It's going to be tough to sell. But I still think we can get 150 for it. Like quickly, I think we can get 150 for it. And I was like, amazing, right? I've got it under contract for 105 to the seller. Even after fees and commissions and everything, if it sold for 150, it'd be a pretty solid payday for me. And so I said, let's do it. So we signed the agreements. We listed it at 150 and we got nothing. Crickets, just no showings, no nothing. And the hard part was, and what I don't want to say maybe a hard part, but one of the bad things was this town, the previous like 60 days had like 10 listed, 10 sold. Like, so everything that came on market was selling immediately. 10 listed, 10 sold. There was only like 10 houses for sale in the market. So it should have been like a 1 month supply of just like, turn and burn kind of stuff. As soon as we listed, the next month, it was like 12 listed, 1 sold. 12 listed, 1 sold. The next month after that, it was like 2 sold, 15 listed. So the available stuff on market expanded dramatically and the amount of stuff selling decreased dramatically. And it just made it hard to get any traction. And so I said, look, let's lower the price. We dropped the price to like 125 because I was like, hey, we need to get this thing sold. She's facing foreclosure. She can't afford to pay the bills. I ended up having to send the seller money to keep the forbearance. It was in forbearance, so there was a small payment that she had to keep making to keep it out of foreclosure. So I started sending her money to pay her mortgage and to pay to keep the utilities on so that we could show this place and try and get it sold. And again, another month went by and there was nothing. We had to do an extension, and I was like, it's just dragging. And so the seller had a mortgage on the thing that owed like $74,000, and she wanted to net 20 something thousand dollars a pocket, hence why we agreed to the 105. I came back to her and I said, look, here's the situation. It's not going, and it's not going to go in the next 30 days based on everything that we're seeing. We need to do a price reduction. And the only way to do a price reduction past where we've reduced it is if we do a reduction in the minimum amount to you, which they obviously weren't happy about. But she kind of understood that, hey, I'm not going to sell it anyways, and I'm going to lose the house to foreclosure if I don't start doing something. And she said, look, let's drop it to 90 to me, right? So that was her number. She said, let's drop it to 90 to me. And so we dropped it to 90 to her, and we dropped the price on market down to 105 is where we put it to. So like we dropped it way down. Like there was going to be a slim margin, but we just wanted to get it sold for this seller at that point. Not necessarily trying to make money for me and like figure out what that is, but like what's the minimum that we can sell it for where I'll still get my money back, make some money, be able to pay agent commissions, that kind of stuff, pay off the mortgage, and get an offer. And like that, we got an offer. And so I was stoked because it was like, all right, great, we got an offer. It was at 100,000 is where the offer came in, and I was like, look, it checks all the boxes. I'll get like $5,000, whatever, like, but it checks the boxes. Let's get it done. So they send their earnest money, then they come out and do an inspection, and then they say, never mind, we don't want it. It's too far gone for us. It needs too much work. We don't want to deal with it. So we're backing out, keep the earnest money, because they sent non-refundable earnest money. They said, keep the earnest money, we just want out. And so at that point I had to call the seller back and say, look, hey, they backed out. They said it's too big a project. They don't want it, period. And she's like, well, they're just trying to get a price reduction. And I'm like, no, they said keep the earnest money. We don't want it, period. We want nothing to do with this thing. And so she was like, all right, whatever. And so we got to next point where I was like, look, we need this thing gone in the next 30 days. I need your mortgage payoff. Like, what is your mortgage payoff? We got the mortgage payoff, which she got was like 73,000 bucks. And I said, look, let's drop it to 80 to you. So you'll at least get the $5,000 in pocket or so after taxes, whatever. But that gives us a little bit more room and we'll drop it even more. And so we dropped the price down to 90,000. She agreed to take 80. We dropped the price down to 90 on market, hoping that we would get maybe investors at this point instead of owner occupants. And we got an owner occupant offer like 3 days later at 105. And they said, we've been missing out on too many houses. We see this one, we like it. We're willing to pay above list if you will sign with us today and let us go through with it. We want a 14-day inspection period, and it has an appraisal contingency. So we were like, all right, fine. Like, I'm totally good with that. So we got a higher offer. Even though we were listed at 90, they offered 105 because they just wanted to make sure they weren't missing out on the house. They did the appraisal contingency. It appraised just fine. We don't know what it appraises for. They don't tell you what it appraises for. But it had issues on the inspection. There was a pretty major foundation problem that had been repaired, but it still looked really ugly. And so they said, look, we'll move forward, but we want you to have a structural engineer come out and check on the house because, you know, we're not happy with what that looks like. And we just want to know what it's going to cost. Do we have to fix it right away, et cetera, et cetera. It was $800 to find a structural engineer who would come out to the small town and write a report that the sellers wanted that had to be paid regardless, whether the sellers moved forward, because it was in their offer. It said, here's our repair contingency. We want the structural engineer report. Based on that report, we will either move forward or cancel. And that was their right to move forward or cancel and get their earnest money back. And so I called the guy and I said, look, we need this done, but we need to pay you out of escrow. So we're not going to pay you up front. We want to pay you out of escrow when it closes. And he was like, all right, I'm fine with that. So, all right, there's $800 that had to go to that guy. He came out, did the inspection. He wrote his report. The sellers got the report, or the buyers got the report, and they said, you know what? We're happy with it. We will move forward. Cool. Cleared that hurdle. Next hurdle, the lender said, hey, we noticed something on the report. We're concerned about the air conditioning system. We want to have the AC checked by a professional, not just the repair or not the appraisal and inspection. We want a specific HVAC person to come out and do it. Okay. So we got an HVAC person to come out and they checked the system. They're like, everything's working fine. There's no problems with it. We're good to go. And we're like, great. Everything's good to move forward. But it wasn't. So the next thing we got was a title company. The title company said, hey, there is a credit card lien from Capital One on this property for an unknown amount of money. They won't tell us how much it is, but we can't sell it unless we satisfy this Capital One credit card lien. And I was like, I didn't even know credit cards get attached to your property. So the person had defaulted on a credit card payment. There was a judgment placed against them. That judgment then got placed against the house. So certain states, they can do that. Not all states. In Iowa, they can place it against the house. So I had to get authorized to talk to the credit card company. It was a debt collector, not the credit card company. It was sold to a debt collector. Debt collector was trying to collect the debt. We got a hold of them. It was $2,800. It was $2,800. So I'm like, okay, so how much money am I making? Went from here to here to here. And I'm like, look, we're okay, fine. We will cover the $2,800. Let's get this thing done. I don't want any more hurdles to go through. Let's get this done. I'll make sure that that's paid for. And so let's move forward. Then the mortgage company refused to send a payoff because it was in forbearance and they had been collecting only a small, like $100 a month payments on it. They were like, look, we want to figure out these numbers. There might be extra fees that were owed because it was in forbearance during this time. And then it was just drama. And I missed some parts. So let me go back to part of the inspections. Seller moved out because she knew she was going to lose the house or she was going to sell it. She moved out, turned off all the utilities. So there was no power and there was no water. And you can't do an inspection on a property with no power and no water. So we had to get the power and water turned back on. But guess what? She owed money to the power company and the water company, over $1,000 to each one of them. And she wasn't able to All right, forgive me. I had my phone was ringing, and it was a seller for a situation that I have to deal with, and it was the buyer for a situation I have to deal with. And so I'm like, all right, let me just. I've been working on this one for days, and they haven't been calling me back. So when I saw them calling me on the caller ID, I had to pause. Anyways, so there was over $1,000 owed to the city for the water, and there was over $1,000 owed to the power company for the power. And so she was like, so I was like, hey, you got to call them and get it turned back on. Normally they'll turn it back on for a day, see what they'll do for you. She called them and they said they're not going to turn them on. So then I was like, all right, fine. I got to get on the phone. So I get on the phone with them and I was like, how much, what can we do? Can we make like a payment plan? Is there a way that we can get this turned back on just temporarily? It doesn't need to be long term. We're going to get a new paying person into this house, but we can't do that if we don't have the inspection. And so the power company agreed to turn it back on with a payment plan. That's all. The only way they would agree to turn it back on is they wanted a $75 payment to turn it on, and then $75 for a month going forward. How that got resolved after the fact, I don't know, because they didn't put a lien on the house. So technically, since she's moved out, she could just stop paying that. But she didn't have the $75 to do it to it. So I had to send her money to make that payment to get the power turned back on. And luckily enough with the city, I was able to just talk them into letting it be turned back on. We had to schedule somebody to go meet them at the house, had the real estate agent meet them at the house, turn the water on, and then they had to be out there to get it turned back off. So anyways, we got all that wrapped up. We got the inspections cleared, and then it got down to the final wire, and we found the credit card lien. We found that $800 inspection that had to be paid. We found the HVAC situation that had to be taken care of. And then it got down to now all we need is a copy of the payoff from Rocket Mortgage so that we can get this done. And so I ended up having to get her to make me as an authorized person that I could call and talk to them. Called and talked to them, and they were still no help. And they were like, look, we will mail you a copy of the payoff within 4 to 8 business days. And I'm like, we are supposed to close this house on Friday. It is Tuesday. I need this like today. And they were refusing to send it to me. And they're like, it's in the customer's portal, and we'll make it available in the customer's portal, but we will not mail you one or email you one. They never did, by the way. They said they were sending one to me. They never did. I ended up having to get the seller back on the phone with them so they could walk them through how to find it, where they uploaded it into the portal. And so she downloaded it and emailed it to me, and I was like, awesome, we were good to go. But it was no longer $73,000 that was owed for the payoff. It was $84,000 that was owed for the payoff because they added a bunch of fees and interest and penalties and escrow shortage, and it was just like, man. On Monday of that week, I was scheduled to make $15,000. By the time all the extra little junk came out before the end of the week when it got closed, I ended up with $8,700 in my pocket to get this all done. We paid, like I said, because I ended up having to pay that $800 inspection. I had to pay the credit card lien that came out of it. I had to pay for the HVAC guy going out. I had to pay for both agents on each side of it. That's how Novation works. You basically agree to a price with them. And since we had dropped her price down to $80,000, I had to send her another addendum that raised her price up to $89,000, I think is what the number was, so that she would still get some cash in pocket. So with everything, she ended up keeping $5,000. I got my $8,700. The agents got paid. The house is gone and it is closed. And this was the crazy story of a Novation deal in rural Iowa, and how all those things could have derailed the situation, how all of those things could have made this from a no deal into a deal. And hopefully this was a fun story time for you about real estate, wholesale real estate, and just a crazy story, and how to be resilient and not let the drama and roadblocks that pop up turn this from a like, hey, anyone could have easily at any point in that been like, this is just not going to work. It's not worth my time. It's not worth the effort. Or like, oh man, there's another roadblock. Oh man, here's another roadblock. But we turned it into a happy seller. She was very stoked at the end. We turned it into a happy buyer. And we turned it into a happy agent who was just happy to see this thing go after all the drama. So anyways, hopefully this was a fun video for you. Check out some of my other videos. I'll have even more fun ones coming up. And thanks for watching.